Hello and welcome to another interview with the developer. Today I'm joined by Bob, who's working on a mod, would you say, for Tomb Raider Angel of Darkness?
Yes, true.
Yeah,
Hi.
called the Definitive Edition. How are you doing
Yes,
today?
I am doing good. Thank you. I am very happy that that the demo has been released. These last few weeks and months have been quite hectic.
Yeah.
So I'm really taking a long deserved break now. So I'm feeling more relaxed and more rested now. So yes, I'm good. Thank you.
So the original Tomb Raider Angel of Darkness was, of course, a really poorly received game with a troubled development. How do you
Yeah.
feel about the original game when it first came out?
I remember being very intrigued by the soundtrack and the story of the game. Those are the two things that struck most with me. And of course, back in the day, the game also looked really great visually, and I also really liked the places where the game took place because I'm from the Netherlands, so having a game set in Europe is very interesting for me too. So yeah,
Yeah, cool. So do you think that it had maybe more potential at the time than people
loads more.
gave it on?
Yes, yes. Yeah.
uh,
I think the story of the Angel of Darkness is a very sad one. The game had so much potential, which wasn't realized. I'm sorry, my dog is just fun thing. The name of my dog is Lara. Lara,
nice.
come, Lara, come. Oh, come. Sorry.
That's fine.
So so this is my dog Lara. Hello.
Cute.
Yeah, she's very cute. So I'm just gonna take her over here, and then she will be calm. No, don't take my ear.
That's fine.
Okay. Yes. So I think the game had so much potential that didn't. This is not gonna work. I'm sorry. Okay, I'm just gonna put it there. We all know that the game released too soon. There were some problems with, of course, the development team. Then there was Chronicles, which they were forced to make. A big part of the more experienced team was forced to work on Chronicles. So then the newcomers, less experienced developers, were put on Angel of Darkness, and those first years of the game, I think, where they were kind of experimenting what they could do with the PlayStation 2. And
Yeah.
only when Chronicles was finished, the old ones from Chronicles were put on in Age of Darkness, and it was a big mess apparently. So they had to redo a lot of stuff, and then we also know that. Not long before the PlayStation 2 arrived, they changed the control scheme of the PlayStation controller. So with a game that already had some issues with the controls, they had to redo the complete control scheme from scratch a few months or maybe half a year before release. So it was kind of a perfect storm of bad luck for this game, and the story written by Murty Schofield is such an interesting one with so many layers, and it's so not default Hollywood for me. Which, when you look at the later Tomb Raider games like Legend and such, those stories are much more simple and much more typical Hollywood style. You have the hero and bad guy. And
Yeah.
what I really liked also about the Age of Darkness is that Lara herself you can see that she has changed. She's a bit snappy. She's a bit moody, and the whole game kind of reflects that with the dark mood it has. So especially also this multi-layeredness is something that really spoke to me back then.
Yeah, sure.
And the original game just had so much potential. I mean, if you look at the way the definitive edition plays now, I think with some additional development time, that core could have released this. Yeah, it's such a shame that the game was forced to be released half finished. Yeah.
So the definitive edition that you are working on, what are the key features, would you say, that you've brought in this edition of the game?
Oh, I wanted to put up my website. Okay.
Sure.
Okay. Well, first of all, I think the most important one actually is that the controls of the game have been improved by a lot.
Well, let me ask you as a side note, what do you think of like tank controls and, you know, kind of what most people would say were dated controls now? What do you think of those control schemes?
I really never actually had that much problem with the way the Angel of Darkness played on PC. There was one thing I did notice always, that when you do this small hop, that you would often swerve left or right. That was something that was really annoying in the game. But other than that, I never really had that much problem with it. But I think that's also because I played all the classics on PC too, so I was just used to controlling a game like that.
Yeah, I've never had an issue with tank controls. I actually think they're fine, and I would play games now, you know, and think that these controls are fine. However, I do remember that in Angel of Darkness, it does take a bit of getting used to when you first start the game, and it's made even more difficult by the fact that the first 2 levels are like really difficult, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Would you agree with that? That when you push past those first 2 levels, it gets a lot easier, you know?
Yeah, I think I never really thought about this like this, but indeed, if they would have swapped the difficulty around from the Parisian ghetto levels with the Parisian backstreets and all those first levels, which also have kind of a pressure going on and climbing and roofs and stuff.
Yeah.
It might have helped people to play it a bit better, but on the other hand, I also really liked the way the game just throws you in, and it's just this dark, gritty, and urgent situation that you have to get out of. I really like those first few levels of the game. I always really like them. Yeah. Like I said, the most important thing would be the overhauled controls. I didn't change anything about that. That was all work from Reborninshadows. And also a bit of the first things from this were done by Sasho648, if I'm not mistaken. So the work he did on that is just splendid. And along the way, I think he started this about 3 years ago, and I was the first one to kind of join him in bringing up ideas and seeing how things worked. And then Josh and Auspicious Defiance also joined the team. So essentially, we are a team of 4 guys who are working on the restoration project actually. But my definitive edition is like an extension of that. So my definitive edition will always include everything that's included in the restoration project. But on top of that, I am also doing the HD remastered graphics. And there are a few small things that I did want to change and that they did not want to change. But overall, the gameplay side is exactly lifted off from the restoration project.
Yeah. So it's a collaborative thing where you work on their project and they work on your project.
Yes. And
build off each other.
Yes, and I must say it's a really nice collaboration. We are really respectful with each other, and we, I made some. I already made some HD textures in advance for Reborninshadows for his project for the story related things in the game. And of course, he made all these control things which I got to include, and then I also did all of the audio modifications that are included in the restoration project. So it's a nice mix. We really just we all just want to make this game the best it can possibly be. But Reborninshadows wants to keep the game the same as the vanilla one, which of course is really understandable, but because there will always be people who want to play the game like how it looked originally.
Yeah.
But me being a huge perfectionist, I really wanted to update the visual side of the game too. So yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, so that's the overall controls. That's I think the most important part of the project actually, and of course also because that's the thing the game was most critiqued about.
Yeah.
Then the HD remastered graphics, the improved gameplay, and by improved gameplay I mean that Reborninshadows, together with consulting us, has really changed some things in the levels themselves. So, for example, in derelict apartment block, where originally the key to the roof was just lying there on the floor next to the door.
Yeah.
We decided to move the key to the second floor, so the player is forced to actually go back down. So there's actually some more gameplay in the level, and things like this have been added in many levels. So also the gameplay has been improved.
Yeah, that's great. I remember
yes.
the Parisian streets level being a little bit bare compared to maybe the other levels. Have you touched on that in any way, like adding more to do maybe in certain levels, or have you just refined the gameplay?
You mean the very first level of the game, or Parisian Ghetto?
Parisian Ghetto, sorry, yeah, that's the level.
Yeah. Well, in Parisian Ghetto, what was added was is a full shop function for Ren's pawn shop, because in the original game you could sell items, but you couldn't buy anything from him. So now there's actually some more reason to actually collect stuff and to sell them to him. So when you collect almost all of the stuff there is to collect, you will be able to buy a pistol from him, and you will be able to buy some pistol magazines from him.
Great.
And this was also done because the gameplay of the first few levels has been changed in the way that you don't really get a pistol until, I don't think, the first one you actually get to keep that's quite useful would be Louvre Galleries, I think, because we did keep the gun in Le Serpent Rouge, but we made sure that you didn't get that many bullets. So when you exit the club, you will most probably be out. And this was done because the original game's vision was really that for the first few levels you would have to be more stealthy and sneaky. And it really seems like the original developers were running out of time, of course. And then last second, some players were, I think, moaning about that they didn't have pistols or something, and they just quickly added some in the first few levels. It really feels like that, because in all the original documents of the game, it's always been that the first few levels were stealthy, and you would have to use the melee combat, which of course was also added for this game. And you would only get the first lethal pistol would be the Vector, actually. And they also removed those. Well, they did keep the single one, I think, in the original game, but they removed the duels, of course, because I don't know why. It's such a strange decision.
I remember that this is one of the reasons I like Angel of Darkness, is especially the Louvre level, where it seems like you have to run or hide or find your way through the level, rather than whereas in the other games you would just stand and shoot people. it really, as you were saying earlier, it got across that desperate feeling that Lara was having of like she needs to do this, and she needs to get through this kind of thing. And the gameplay is what delivers that, I think, in Angel of Darkness.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Yes, I must say I think also the favorite levels of the game for me are the Louvre levels. I really like the music and the stealthy, sneaky feeling, and the feeling that you are somewhere where you are absolutely not supposed to be. And of course also because it's based on a real life location, and also I've been to the real Louvre Museum, and you can really see that the level really looks quite much like so like some original galleries and hallways in the Louvre. So it's that's it was so cool to actually be there and just really recognize all this stuff. It was awesome. Yeah.
So can you tell us a bit about the restored cut content in the game that you've now brought to the definitive edition of the game?
Yes. There's been so much has been restored. I think when we looked at when you look at the demo of the definitive edition, the things that have been restored will be the dialogue audio, the audio lines from Lara, and also some dialogue from the police officers in Paris. So much was restored for that. I mean, they recorded so much for the original game, and I think maybe 30% of it was used. It's just insane. So I think with all the lines we restored, and also we also improved the original tutorial lines that were there in the very first level, so they are more appropriate and they actually teach you stuff better. And also and we also added some. I also added some police dialogue to that, so to make things feel a bit more immersive. And so many lives have been restored. So that's, I think, the biggest part of it. And of course, for the rest of the game, the dual pistols have been restored in their original glory. So you will actually find the first one somewhere in the loop, I think, and then the second one in the archaeological dig. And when you find a second, Lara will actually combine them. So that's a really cool new feature. And of course, it was always very frustrating for me to see Lara have them in all these cutscenes, and you could never use them. I was like, what the fuck is this? Why? So now they are fully restored, and not in a way that you can just use them in every level, but in a way that really makes sense. And it also really makes sense when looking at the original vision of the game. And I in the Parisian Backstreets level has been opened, so that's the first level of the game. Sadly, not all of it. Sadly, not all of it has been opened yet, because there are some issues with the geometry in that zone of the level. But the problem is that we can change almost everything in the game, but we still cannot change the geometry. So that's a bit of a bummer. But I must say that Reborninshadows has managed to actually recompile a full level from the original world editor tool that Angel of Darkness was created with. But there was one problem remaining, and that's that he could not get the pickups to work properly. So we cannot actually recompile the original levels yet. But I think somewhere in the future, I think maybe towards the end of the year or something, that we might be able to recompile a full level. And of course, when we can do that, we can use Maya to edit the geometry, and then we can like fully turn this game upside down and fix everything. Because even in the definitive edition, there still are quite a lot of geometry issues left. But which sadly cannot be fixed yet. But I made a very detailed list of all of these problems, So when we can edit them, I'm just gonna bust them all. I'm really looking forward to that, because really, when those things have been fixed, this game will feel so polished. I mean, the definitive edition already does, but when these final tiny things, those tiny graphical errors have been fixed, it will be more polished than I think some other Tomb Raider games in the franchise actually. So players will never be able to nag about how it's a buggy game and blah blah. So, yeah.
So with the geometry, is this a technical limitation of the game engine that's preventing you from editing the levels in a certain way?
No, what the problem is, we have to reverse engineer everything we do. So it's not an option to edit the geometry that way just yet, because we can replace and inject all of the texture maps, but not the geometry. Okay. The original game did have, and I must say, the PC port of the game had issues all over the level where the faces were flipped. So you would often look into nothing. You would look at the backside of the faces that didn't have the textures applied to them. So that was really one of the biggest problems the PC game had graphically, and that's something I can fix, because that's related to the materials. So I just say to all these materials that they have to be double-sided, and that fixes many of the problems the PC game had.
Well, I'm sure it's still the original game is still more polished than Cyberpunk 2077, I think. So,
Yes, I did not play, but I saw and heard some horrible things from it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that game.
Okay.
Do you think there were any specific fan requests and feedback on the original game that you wanted to address with the definitive edition?
No, I think most of it was just our vision, and of course, most importantly, Core Design's vision, and then our vision on that. So how we wanted to re-implement all of that, and all of the things we saw or we felt were wrong with the game that could use improvement. That's the things we changed. So it's really much from our hearts what we wanted to improve.
Sure. So with doing something like changing the controls, there's, I'm guessing, can be like unintended consequences to that within the game. Have you come across that at all? Like, for example, have you changed the physics of, how Lara would jump and how far she can reach, kind of thing?
Yeah, I think the biggest one there that I did read, actually, I did read some feedback about that in a playthrough. I think. Well, in the original game, Lara's running animation speed was set to I don't know, like 70% or something. Really strange. We think it might have something to do with them wanting to upgrade the running speed too throughout the game, but it was never actually implemented.
Yeah.
But in the original game, Lara ran really awfully slow. So we fixed that, but I did read some comments about people needing to get used to that they would run through the levels a bit faster, so they would have to respond a bit faster and look a bit faster.
Yeah.
But other than that, I don't think we really didn't change anything related to the physics or how far Lara can jump or stuff like that, because of course when you do that, you really can have the problem that the levels won't work as they were intended. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So other than that, I don't think there's anything. We just really took what was there and we made sure it worked properly, and that's the most important thing that was done for the controls. And then, of course, the PC version didn't have support for a controller. Yeah, well, it had support, but it didn't work at all. So that was implemented, and that was you don't want to know how much work Reborninshadows have put into this. It's insane. Really, the game, from what I've heard, I never played the PlayStation 2 version, but what I heard from them is that it actually plays better on a PC with a controller now than it does on the PlayStation 2. And
Sure.
more so, I really feel, I think Josh and I invented the control scheme for the controller for the definitive edition. And I think it works really, really intuitive, and it makes sense where all the buttons are located. So I'm quite proud of that. I think it plays great. Even like I said, I never played it on the PlayStation 2, but it feels really logical and intuitive the way the game is played now, and also how you can just simply press the PlayStation button on the PlayStation controller to do a quick save. And the same for the Xbox controller for the Xbox button and stuff like that. It just really works.
So, that's great.
Yeah.
So what was your process for consulting with core design and Murty Schofield's original visions during development? Because you mentioned that you were a big fan of their original concept for the game.
Yeah. So he uploaded, I think, about all of the original design documents for the game, and also the early versions and the versions after that and the final versions. So reading all of those documents really gives you a super clear idea of what they wanted to do originally and how things changed and what they wanted to do. And we really read those documents a lot. And fun thing about that also is that when reading this, we also I knew it. I knew they I knew they were trying to do that, but it just didn't get it to work.
Yeah.
So with the restoration project and the definitive edition, we really took this as kind of our holy Bible and really made sure to implement as much of this as we possibly could. So I don't think there's a way to make it more like their vision than this. I think this is the best way to do this.
Yeah, that's great.
We know that Germany was cut and Cappadocia was cut, but also they were really gonna repurpose all this stuff for the next game. So it's not really like they really removed it, but they just wanted to cram too much into one game. And they figured that out quite early, I think. I think the biggest gripe people have with this game is the controls. That's the first thing, and the absence of tombs, and that's mostly because the first, I don't know how many hours would it be, 2 hours. Depends on how quickly you play, of course, but
yeah,
that doesn't have tombs, and that's the second thing, and then the third thing is just unnecessary hate. And that's really something I get really mad about with this game. But that's of course the same with everything. When there's a book or a movie and some critics talk shit about it, and then everyone goes like, "Oh, then it must be shit," and then everyone calls it shit, and it's this game really didn't deserve it. And I must say, I must admit the PC part of the game was quite a mess, but the PlayStation 2 version, there was really not much wrong with it, honestly. And yeah, I don't know. Maybe just people can't handle change or something. They like, oh, this is Tomb Raider, and the first levels are just in a city, and then I'm just gonna give up or something. I don't know. Yeah, it's really not deserved. I really liked how core design tried to do something different with this game, and it really shows. They had a full orchestra for this game, and I think almost none games had that back then. And they had this really interesting storyline and character development, and when you look at Tomb Raider Legend after that, for example, it's a game I really love, but they just really played it safe.
Yeah.
And I really like the EXE of Darkness for its originality. Yeah.
So you mentioned the soundtrack. Of course, the game has an amazing soundtrack, but you have remastered the audio for this definitive edition. Is that right?
Yeah, well, I must say the sound quality of the music in the original game isn't all that noticeably bad everywhere. There are some tracks that I did replace, and also the music in the game wasn't compressed as heavily, but mostly the sound effects were really, really compressed, and somehow they were compressed in the same bit rate and stuff as on the PlayStation 2 version, and somehow the PC version ended up sounding more crappy because that's like everything that happened with the PC port. I don't know what happened. So for the dialogue in the game, for the conversations in the game, I with help of Ghostblade, I managed to extract the audio from the PlayStation 2 version, which has the same bitrate and the same everything, but it sounds better. It's really weird. And I fixed the lip sync for the conversations. Also, somehow the lip sync was off on the PC version. It wasn't that perfect on the PlayStation 2 either, but it was noticeably better. So that's what I did for the audio. Also, I replaced some sound effects of the original game that sounded awfully compressed with the original sound effects, because I do have a database of all the original sound effects of the game. So that's really cool. But having to replace all of them in each and every level of that's just not worth it, I think. So I really just played the game, and whenever I heard a sound, that sounds really noisy or grainy or compressed, I just looked it up and replaced it. So it really does make a difference too. Yeah.
You've replaced it with a brand new sound rather than remastering the original sound. Is that what you're saying?
No, for the pistol sounds, I did use some new sounds because I just felt they missed a bit of oomph. They sounded a bit flat. But for all of the other audio effects, I have a database of the original uncompressed sound effects from the original game. So I can just take that and run it through Sony Vegas I use and render it in the exact bitrate stuff and such the Age of Darkness needs, and it just sounds crystal clear. So that's so satisfying to hear. You are looking up an original sound effect, and it's all like, and then you hear the original, and it's so pristine, and oh, it's amazing.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So I wanted to say also that I'm in contact with Peter Connolly. He managed to dig up some of the in-game music tracks that were not recorded at Abbey Road Studios, and they are also uncompressed. So I'm gonna use that for future releases of the Definitive Edition. And he's also going to look into if he can find the original dialogue. So if that would exist, that would be awesome. If we would have that, we would have everything in their uncompressed quality. So
yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah,
that's brilliant. So I know there was a glitch in again the Parisian ghetto where if you spoke to people out of order, it could lock you out of the progression entirely, I'm pretty sure. So you had to do it in like the exact right order, or this person would just continue saying the same line rather than saying the line that progressed the game. I've heard about that bug.
I must say we never discussed this, so I'm not sure if it actually is a problem.
Well, it's obviously not a widespread thing. If it's, I mean, I've just read about it once, maybe in a, article about how the game failed and stuff like that.
It might be people just exaggerating things or not remembering things correctly.
Yeah, sure.
I literally never heard of it and also never encountered it, so I don't.
Yeah,
but if
I mean, I got stuck. I got stuck plenty of times, but I didn't.
You mean with the problem you are describing?
I got stuck in the Parisian ghetto, when I first played the game, and I didn't know how to progress.
Oh, you didn't know how to progress, or you had this problem and you could not progress?
I don't know. It could have been either one.
Okay.
But it was only when
One of
I later replayed the game that I managed to get past that level and finish the game.
oh
So
oh no, I never had it either. When I was I think when the game released, I was 11 years old. I think I
yeah,
never I could always I never had problems finishing the game actually. No.
yeah.
But one of the biggest things that it's quite a fun story. Two of the biggest engine issues that the game had were fixed like in a time span of 3 days around the release of the definitive edition. So
Right.
those are things that have been known for years and years, and we discuss it often and back and forth and blah blah blah. And then literally the day of the release, Nakamichi managed to fix the geometry of the levels sometimes flickering and disappearing when you are standing in a certain angle.
Okay.
And he discovered that it happens when you're on the border of of a room. Each level is divided in rooms, like the original Tomb Raider games. And when you are exactly at the perimeter of those rooms and you look in a certain direction, just whole segments of the level disappear. So that's really something that was quite often hard to reproduce. But when you were just happily playing the game, some things just flashed away, and I was like, "What the fuck was that?" And
Yeah.
really one of the biggest things that still made the game feel a bit glitchy and buggy, and he managed to fix it. So that's
Yeah.
awesome, because the game
Great.
feels so much more solid now. And the other thing I was talking about, that's been fixed, I think, 2 days after I released the first version of the definitive edition, was that in the original game, when you, I must say, that was also a problem with the PC port. When you save the game in a level that had volumetric fork in it, so fork in the distance, and you would exit the game and then come back to it, the fork was gone. And
Okay.
that drastically changed how the levels looked, especially when looking at Parisian Ghetto, for example. And the original game had that when you just saved during gameplay and then reloaded, and also when you exited, when you shut down the game completely and then restarted. And Reborn did already manage to fix it for when saving during gameplay and then loading, and Nakamichi fixed it and fixed it entirely now. So that was one of the biggest, most annoying glitches in the game left. That was really obvious. That has been fixed a few days after the release. So my new version that's up for download now on the website has all of those fixes included. So it really feels very solid and non-glitchy now. The game is just amazing.
Yeah. Cool.
And
Well,
honestly, I didn't really even have the time to play it myself with these new fixes. So I'm quite looking forward to experiencing it
yeah.
all again. Yeah.
Great. One of the things I find interesting about Angel of Darkness, and a funny story from me as well, is that it's one of the only games of that era where you could save anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's not really a normal thing on PS2. I don't think you could just open the menu and save. So I got very far in the game. I think I was on maybe the second to last level,
And you
and
didn't save.
I saved
Oh,
when I was about to die.
oh no!
I jumped off a ledge, and
Oh god!
I tried loading the game, but I instead pressed to save it.
Oh,
So it just I couldn't continue the game. I
oh
had to
god!
restart the whole game.
Yeah, I think you might have learned to save in different slots after that. All right.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Oh
But
god!
yeah,
Yes.
it's not often on a PS2 game you can just save wherever you want.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah, but the save system in the original in the Angel of Darkness works the same as the classic games.
Yeah, but
I mean, on the PC. Hold on.
on
I know there's some
PC.
differences.
Okay.
Yeah, there are some differences with
Yeah.
the PlayStation 1, Tomb Raider 3, for example, had those save crystals, right?
Yeah, Tomb Raider 3 had you could use them as long as you had save crystals, you could use them to save in Tomb Raider 3. But the first two games you could only save at specific places which had
Oh,
save crystals.
yeah, well, like I said, I only played the classics on the PC, so I was always very spoiled with this, just the ability to save anywhere. Yeah,
Yeah, of course.
and I know there are some people who have been asking if we could could implement some kind of checkpoint save game system. I
Yeah.
think that would be really hard to do, and also on the other hand, I don't really like it. I just feel the Angel of Darkness is a classic game, and again, for me, it's it feels
Yeah.
like the original classic games, and
I think
yeah, I
checkpoints
think
are overused in modern gaming, really. They don't
yeah,
necessarily need to be part
no.
of every game.
I really don't like how modern games are just taking you by the hand everywhere and they're just made too easy. I really like the way how the classic Tomb Raiders are a bit more harsh on you. I just really like that actually. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a demo available for the definitive edition.
Yes.
Is there also like a proper release, or is it just the demo that you put out at the moment?
At the moment, I just put out the demo because I just didn't finish anymore.
Yeah. Okay.
I have worked on the Louvre level quite a bit. That was about 9 years ago, I think. So that's still waiting for me to continue that. But
Yeah.
eventually, the whole game will be covered. And yes, I will finish it because I am a very persistent person, and I've put so sickeningly many hours into this already. It will be stupid to not just finish it. So I really am going to
Yeah.
finish this. And the great thing about the way I can work now is that I can work way faster than back in the day, because back in the day I had to use text mod, and I literally had to manually scan the game for the textures I wanted to change. I had to dump them, and then I had to edit them in Photoshop, and then to save them again, and I had to restart the whole game again, and through the main menu and through the load game, and it just took in an insane amount of time. And now with the level editor tool made by Nakamichi too, yeah, and also some other tools he made, I must say he really laid the whole foundation for this whole project, because without him, none of them would have none of this would have been an option. So so what I can do now is I can open the level in Maya, and I can just the level is linked to a folder of the texture maps, and I can just open them in Photoshop and remake the textures and hit save, and it just plops. It's just the new texture. So I can literally see what I'm doing, and I also work with two screens. So my workflow is so much faster now, and I also had to figure out, of course, last year how to use the audio tools that Ghostblade made too, so we can edit the audio. And I now know how to do all of my stuff, and I have a nice workflow. So I'm really looking forward to getting on with the rest of the game. Just simply chronologically start with Louvre Storm Drains, and then do all of the textures for that, and then the audio, and then check, okay, next level, because this first segment of the game that's now included in the definitive edition has been such a mishmash, just chaos. And let's go back to the level and again, and oh, then we can change audio. Oh, we got to go back to the level again, and oh wait, we can do this now too. Okay, gonna back to the level again. It was just everything through each other, and of course the Parisian Ghetto is like this big hub level, so it's not really a chronological level either. So, and it consists of three different zones that also have LOD for the same part of the level in the other zone, so I actually I actually had to redo the prison ghetto level like 3 times. So I'm so glad that's over, and the rest of the game is more chronological. So I think when I will continue working on this, that the progress will be a lot faster even than it was now. So
Great.
I think a full release, yeah, it depends on how much I work on it. Yeah, it will still be a few years away, but not in the sense of like 11 years when I started working on this way back then, when the project was still a lot less ambitious. But I think it will be a few years, and then I think also Reborninshadows will be fully finished with his project, so he will finish up the control and the gameplay side of the game. And I think they will be long finished before I will finish my definitive edition, because it's still a lot of work. But so I think when the definitive edition will release its first is 1.0 release, that the whole game will be fixed up amazingly.
Yeah, great. I'm looking forward to playing it. I will, of course, leave information down below, links to the demo and to your website and things like that for people who want to check that out. And thanks very much for coming on and letting us know about this amazing looking project.
Thank you, and you're welcome, and I'm glad you like it, and I'm really glad to see many people on the internet liking it. I really, well, the biggest issues were the people just don't read instructions. I made this really comprehensive documents for the way how to install the game and stuff, and there's of course text in the setup wizard, but people just don't read. So most of the problems that people had were this, but I really didn't hear much critique or dislikes about things we did with the game. So I think in a culture where people are quite often that they would send hate over the internet, I think it's been received extremely well. So I'm really happy with how it's doing.
Okay. Final thing. Will it work on the GOG version, Steam version, disc version? It'll work on all those?
Yes, so I will just walk you through that. I would advise using the disc version or the old GOG version. And I discovered last week that there is that GOG released a new version in 2017, apparently, which somehow adds more, I don't know, antivirus alert stuff to it, and that breaks the AIX audio effects, because of course they don't fix anything in this game for 20 years, and the only thing they do breaks things, so that's awesome. So the old version of the GOG release and the new versions can be you can see which is which when you look at the default install directory, because the old version installs in the program files GOG.com folder, and the new version installs either in the program files GOG Galaxy directory or in the C GOG games directory. So if you have any of the new ones, I would not advise using it, because it can break the controller support, because you are forced to run the anti-micro-X program as an administrator, and it will most likely break the AIX the sound effect. The easiest way is the old GOG version or the disk version. Those just work immediately. For Steam, you also have to disable some settings related to the things Steam tries to do with the control compatibility, because it will give some Steam will get overlain all of a sudden, and it breaks the control scheme for the controller for Age of Darkness. And so the easiest is the old GOG version and the disk version, and the Steam version works fine too, but you do have to do some additional steps for it to work, but they are all, of course, described in the installation instructions if you would read them. So and also I have a really nice guy. I'm sorry, I'm not sure it's a guy, but Manny Calavera has been working on making a guide how to set up the Steam properly on a Steam Deck. And it works apparently. I don't have a Steam Deck, so I cannot verify that it does. But he says it works, or she, sorry. I think the guide is almost finished, and when it is finished, I will implement it into the graphic style I use for my own manuals, and then I will see if any additional changes will have to be made to the game itself, and then I will also release a version that's compatible with Steam Deck.
Okay, great stuff.
I think I've been looking a bit into Steam Deck. I didn't really know it existed, honestly. I think it allows you to also stream to a television, and you can also connect a PlayStation controller to it. So it would essentially make it feel like you're playing on the PlayStation. So people have been asking for that too. So through a Steam Deck, I think that would also be an option. So I think if all of that works, we've got everyone quite well covered. So yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, is there anything else you'd like to add, or is that have we covered everything there?
Yes, I think the most important thing I want to add is that that people please give this game another chance. It really deserves it.
I agree.
This game just got way too much hate. Of course, there were problems with the game. Of course, there were, but it really deserves the second chance. So please give it a second chance, and especially with my definitive edition, of course.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's why I'm looking forward to it, because I am a big fan of this game, and it would be nice to replay it again with some added features and with it looking and sounding a lot better.
Yeah, so you haven't played the definitive edition yet yourself, or have you?
I've downloaded the demo files, but I didn't get around to playing the demo. So,
oh my God,
I will be playing it this week.
Okay, cool. So if you would like to share some additional videos or screenshots of your gameplay, that would be great too.
Of course.
I just want to get this game to get as much attention as possible. Also, Ash, I must say, he did most of the work on the website. Well, he laid the foundation for the website, and the amazing first thing you see when you open the website. And Ash, what did I want to say about Ash?
Yeah, the website looks great, by the way. Yeah,
thank you.
It's got like a retro feel to it, but it's like really, really nice. Yeah. Obviously, not retro in like a shitty 90s website kind of way. Retro in it looks, aesthetically pleasing.
Thank you. Yeah, I wanted to say something about Ash, something different. Oh my God, I just totally forgot. It's a bit of a blackout from the interview, I think. No, but okay. I also want to thank everyone who's worked on anything that's included in the definitive edition. Most importantly, Nakamichi and Reborninshadows. They are the wizards of this game. I don't know how they do all the programming, reverse engineering stuff, but it's just astounding. Yeah.
Okay, great stuff. And with that, I'll click end broadcast and hope that this has all been recorded.
Okay, bye-bye.
Okay, cheers, mate. See ya.